Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Lou. I'm a registered dietitian, and on this channel we talk about finance, wellness, dietetics, and corporate America. If any of those topics interest you, be sure to subscribe. In today's video, as you can see by the title, I want to talk about how I started my now part-time nutrition-based private practice. When I was looking for information on this on YouTube, I didn't see a lot, so I'm hoping that this video helps you and also encourages you to start your nutrition-based private practice. I think it's important for me to first start off and say that I'm a registered dietitian, so this is going to probably apply more for registered dietitians, and I focus more so on that space. If you've been watching me for a while, you know that I got registered as a dietitian in 2018. In 2019 is when I actually officially registered my business. So I went to the Maryland government website. I used the name, which was at that time Alive and Well. So I registered my name and I registered my business. And that's all I did in 2019. The reason why is because I was also trying to familiarize myself with nutrition counseling and where I wanted to fit. I came from a clinical background, so going into this space was a little bit different for me, but I knew it was something that I definitely wanted to do part-time. I started working for a business called Maven Clinic, and I still work for Maven Clinic. I love Maven Clinic. So if you're a registered dietitian and you want to apply, go ahead and do so. So I started working for Maven Clinic in 2019. And in order to work for Maven Clinic, you had to be a clinician for at least a year. So this gave me an opportunity to actually see counseling. It was more so focused on a prenatal and pregnancy approach, but it gave me the opportunity to become more comfortable with offering nutrition counseling. In January of 2020 is when I had decided that I wanted to launch my business. So towards the end of 2019, I was preparing for the launch. I had created a planner that I wanted to use. I was going to do a nutrition boot camp with people who were interested, and I wanted to also offer a group fitness dynamic. So I had launched all of that information in January to kind of let people know that I was taking clients and this is the path that I wanted to do. I had already created a website. I had put my business on Google Business, so if people were looking for nutritionists in the area, I would come up. And I also created content on Instagram to let people know that now I am accepting clients and you can book me as a nutritionist. Like many people, you will see that I offer like the 15-minute free discovery calls. And I don't foresee this ever going away because I do think discovery calls are helpful for you as well as the client to determine, are we gonna have a good working relationship? Do you understand my niche and what I can offer to you? So I started off with doing the 15-minute discovery calls, and I showed people how to book it on my website, and that was the first step in order for me to actually start getting clients. So remember, I launched in January. I didn't hear much. I was putting it on IG, but I didn't hear a lot of feedback. I would get a lot of people, not a lot, I would get people here and there who would do a discovery call. They had a quick question and I would answer it. But I didn't have a lot of people actually transitioning and turning into clients. So in summer of 2020 or towards like May, I don't know what happened, but my clientele started to pick up. And this is probably because of the pandemic. People wanted to be more healthy. They wanted to add a nutritionist onto like their wellness routine. So I started to have or get more clients in that way. And at this point, I'm just private pay. So people were paying out of pocket. And I had created packages where it will be monthly, so you'll book with me monthly and we will work together for a month. And the reason why, and this is something I still believe, it's hard to just do one session. I definitely think that in order to actually impact a client, I have to work with you for at least a month to see if we would actually make progress together. So that's where that was the direction I was heading in. The clients that I was booking at that time was through word of mouth, through IG, through just looking me up and finding me through hashtags on Instagram, which I definitely encourage. So that's the first way that people were finding me. But I noticed that a lot of these clients were focused on weight loss, which is okay. But I started to know that I wanted to branch out a little bit more. But either way, I still went ahead, and that's what I was focusing on because I still wanted to get comfortable with nutrition counseling. So at this point, I have Maven that I'm still counseling on probably on a weekly basis, about 5 clients. And then I would have my clients that would book me privately through my website as well. And most of the clients that were booking me through my website, they wanted to have some form of meal planning. And if you're a dietitian, you know that meal planning is a headache, especially when you're doing it by yourself and building things out. So the first software that I used in order to meal plan was called Eat Love. And I love Eat Love. I love the platform. It's very customizable. But for my budget, because of my clientele was up and down, the money that I would pay for the meal planning software just didn't add up and it didn't make sense. So then I switched over to Living Plate. And Living Plate is great because you can purchase the meal plan on a clientele basis.
I'm not sure I understand.
So I switched to Living Plate, and you can actually buy the meal plans based off of each individual clientele or client. So that was usually about maybe $15 max that I would be spending on a monthly meal plan for a client. But with both of these options, as you guys know, because I'm Black, I tend to attract more Black people who want to work with me. Both of these options are okay, but some of the meal options just aren't realistic for Black people. So because of that, I kind of just moved away from meal planning, because I also didn't really like the idea of meal planning in that way, because it just seemed like a diet where I would give people and they would follow, and as soon as they don't follow it, they don't know what to do. So I wanted to focus more on nutrition education, and I realized that my focus was more so heavily on the mental health aspect, not particularly eating disorders, but how to cope with stress, emotional eating, comfort eating, and how I can actually help people build a wellness routine. So focusing more on wellness and how I can actually help them in their journey discover what they want to do in that approach. I do want to talk about the tools that I use. So along with Eat Love and the Living Plate software I use, I also had the Google admin, so I would have my emails that people could email me through. That was another tool I used, and I was mainly using Zoom as well as Google Meet for my clients back then. So I wasn't using any type of electronic health record. I was more so keeping it on my own, or having the records for my own keeping. And because I wasn't using insurance, I didn't need to have like a really robust EHR. So after summer, my clients started to die down. I also didn't want to work a lot with clients that were focused on weight loss. So I was starting to kind of rediscover what I wanted to do. So I decided to take a break towards the end of the year, at the end of 2020, to kind of discover where I wanted to land. So I was watching information about starting a private practice. I was looking up YouTube and watching all the information. And I saw a webinar about insurance, and something just clicked in my head. For some reason, this whole time I was self-pay, and I wasn't even thinking about the insurance aspect of it. So now, towards the end of 2020, I realized, like, wait, I could take insurance. And it just had never occurred to me, but I realized, like, this probably makes sense, because in my area, people are still becoming familiar with the dietitian, and they might not want to pay the money that it costs in order to actually have the service. So I watched a webinar that was free on YouTube, and I will probably link that below because that also helped me. And it was in the middle of the night, and I decided at that point that I was going to start the process to become credentialed with insurance providers. In order to actually start to become credentialed with insurance providers, you need a couple of things. So number one, you have to decide whether or not you're going to be an LLC, or this is just going to be like under your social security number. At this point, I had already registered my business back in 2019, and I was already an LLC. So I had no desire to change that. So I started with my I kept my LLC because I had already registered my business. And I then used that information to apply for an EIN number through the IRS. This is a free process. It didn't cost anything. I just went on there and I obtained an EIN number. After this, I needed to get a group NPI number, as well as understand or relearn my individual NPI number. If you've worked in a hospital setting, which I have, or a clinical setting, most 9 times out of 10 you have an individual NPI number. This is because you're taking insurance, they're billing for your services, so you most likely have it, but you just have to figure out what that number is. So I went on to the national, I don't know the name off the top of my head, but I'll put it on the screen. I went on their website and I registered for my individual, or I looked up my individual NPI number, number. We got the documents for that, saved that, and I also applied for my group NPI number, which was for my business. At that time, my business was Alive and Well, so I applied for an NPI number for Alive and Well company. So the EIN number, the group NPI, the individual NPI, and I also needed to have insurance through Mercer Pro Liability, or not through Mercer. I just needed applied through Mercer Pro Liability because they are familiar working with dietitians, and I got a good deal for the annual package. So I went ahead and used Mercer as my insurance provider. Once I had all of those things in place, I then went to the CAQH, which you'll notice that a lot of insurance companies actually pull their information from this application in order to actually credential you and look up your information. So I filled out all the information. I just took my time, went through everything. I wouldn't say you want to do everything on one day. I would say pick a day to do each thing, or you can do 2 things on one day. But the CAQH, I'll probably spend like maybe 2-3 days just going through it, not rushing, and just filling out all the information you need and attesting the documents, signing the documentation, because this is the application that they're going to use in order to actually find your application to be credentialed. After I did this, I then called each insurance company that I was interested in being credentialed with. I called United Healthcare, Aetna, Cigna, and CareFirst Blue Cross Blue Shield. I will say, along with this process, something that helped me tremendously is joining Facebook groups. There are 2 groups in particular: dietitians in private practice, and I think insurance and billing for nutrition professionals. I think that's the name of the groups. I will definitely link them down below. I encourage you to join these 2 groups and search the groups before you ask any questions, because most times the group has already answered the questions, or they have documents addressing the questions. But these 2 groups helped me tremendously in my business, determining what I wanted to do, my approach, how to go about this process, and I found a lot of information there. So definitely visit those 2 groups if you have Facebook, and see if you could just join the community just to get familiar. So now this is the end of 2020. I had taken a break from my private clients just to focus on this process, and then 2021 comes about, and I became credentialed with Cigna. Cigna had a directory where people could find me. I was still on Google My Business. I had my website. I was on IG. So I started to get people who were actually Cigna clients that were interested in using or having a dietitian, and they didn't know the process. So at this point, I was like, okay, what else do I need? How do I figure this out? I already had my email. I already had my website, but now I needed an EHR, an official one. I opted to use Simple Practice because, again, Simple Practice integrates billing, insurance billing, into their software. Because I was a newbie, I was like, I don't need a bunch of softwares because I would get confused. So I just went with Simple Practice, and which already had everything integrated in it, and I used Simple Practice in order to get started. Now, since I've been doing the insurance process for about 6 months, I can definitely see how my business can scale and grow, but it's definitely something I want to continue to grow and learn. I did not become credentialed with other companies or other insurance providers. United Healthcare, I don't believe they were taking dietitians. I know what they were at capacity as well, and I'm still working with CareFirst to see if I can become credentialed with them. But once you start to watch a lot of information about this topic, you'll notice that and right now I'm still part-time. If you're part-time and you're credentialed with about 2 to 3 companies, you'll notice that your schedule will fill up quickly. So definitely take your time, figure out what companies are popular or what insurance providers are popular in your area, and see if they're accepting dietitians. You would definitely have to call them, ask them about their credentialing process, and then go through that with each company that you're interested in. So once you become credentialed, of course, you're going to be on their directory. So you'll get calls and phone number, or you'll get calls directly from clients that are interested in booking you. You don't always have to do a discovery call. Some people will still find you through your website and do a discovery call. I think you'll definitely figure out how you want to approach that. In addition to being on the directory of Cigna, I also joined the website Health Professionals, Health Profs, and I do get some clients that find me that way. And I think it's very good because it's something like Psychology Today, but for all health professions. And it also depends on your area. I found out that in Maryland, Health Professionals is more lucrative in my area to actually get leads And then in New York, you might find something like ZocDoc being more popular in order to get leads. But in these, with these websites, I do think it's important to be able to tell people what you focus on, so that way you're not also getting clients just because you need clients. I think it's important because you'll notice that there is money to be made, but not all money is good money. So determining where your niche is, what you want to focus on, is definitely something that I find is very important and has helped me in my private practice over the course of working and being part-time, as well as just building my clientele. Okay, so I want to talk about mistakes that I have made while starting my nutrition private practice, and hopefully you don't make the same mistakes. So right now, again, I'm only credentialed with Cigna. My number one mistake is that I would go on Cigna for healthcare providers, which is their website that they would use, and I would look up the benefits, have the explanation, and that was it. I would look up what they would say, what the copay would be, and I would just start billing for clients, or billing clients based off of the visits that I would have. And there's a little section that might say unlimited. So I assume that if I see that word unlimited, that they have unlimited visits, and any dietitian wants to have unlimited visits with a client. So I would start to see clients and I would book them, and I would continue to repeat their services until one day I noticed that, or not one day, there was one claim that got rejected or denied. I called them, I said, hey, what's going on? Why did I get denied? And they say like, oh, this client actually only has 3 appointments for this preventative service. And I was like, oh, okay. But I thought the website says unlimited. They're like, oh, you actually have to call us to know what the number of visits are going to be for your particular patient. And I was like, okay, so that adds another thing onto my list. I have to plan to call Cigna in order to get the number of visits if I'm seeing a Cigna patient, which is definitely something that's important. And I think all of this to say, I also still see people who are self-pay. So that's important to know. So with Cigna, I noticed that was one of the mistakes that I was making, because once it gets rejected or it gets denied, because I was starting up, I wouldn't charge for the claim that got denied, so I would just write it off. But definitely something you want to be mindful of. The second mistake I made, I used to not require a credit card to be on file or a card to be on file, because I thought that might deter people or scare people away. But what happens when the claims get denied is that I really just gave free service. And yes, that's okay sometimes, but for that to happen a lot, especially in the beginning, can be a little bit discouraging. So I definitely think for simple practice, you can have a card on file and you make sure that, okay, if it gets denied, I might not charge you for the full amount of the claim, but definitely going to charge you for a portion, because I still saw you during that time and I still provided my services. So definitely something I would definitely have a card on file. And the third one, I would say I did not implement a late policy or a no-show policy early on. I definitely think that this is important, because if you don't implement a late policy, people will start to come 15 minutes late. If you don't implement a no-show policy, people will just not show up and they won't say anything. I think it's important, because if you want your time to be respected, especially if you're doing this part-time, you definitely want to have a no-show policy as well as a late policy, and enforce it. Because I felt weird at first of saying like, okay, should I enforce it? Should I give them maybe the next time they'll realize? But I definitely think you prepared for the appointment, you sat down, you waited. It's important that you actually enforce that policy. So those are the 3 mistakes that I feel like I've made, and I hope that you don't make the same mistakes by watching this video. So that is everything. I hope I didn't miss anything. Again, if you guys have any questions, this is going to be a series because this is growing. I'm still new to this, so definitely something I'm growing in, but I hope this provides a resource for how to start your nutrition-based private practice. So at this time, I take insurance clients, I take self-pay, and I'm still on Maven once a week taking clients there as well, because I do have some people who like to see me regularly. So that is how I started, and I'm still working full-time in addition to this. So it's definitely about me just managing my schedule, but I wanted to share that with you guys. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below, and I would definitely try to get to them. Thank you so much for watching, and good luck, y'all.